Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Matty Loves Podcast. This is episode number 6, where we will be continuing our discussion on the history of comic books, according to myself and Dr. Tom Lucas. You ready?
We were really getting into it, and that show went kind of long, man.
Yeah, we kind of, I kind of had a feeling too, based on the subject matter alone, that we might be running a bit long than our usual episodes. But, comic books, it's why we're here, man. It is why we are doing this podcast here, for the most part.
Well, it's when people ask me what the show is about, I say it's comic-centric, but, those threads, the things that come out of comics, go into every other area of our lives, geekdom and life in general.
Sure,
it
absolutely.
crosses over to everything from, what we're reading, what we're watching, what we're playing, what we're creating, how it's influenced us as people.
Right.
All things geekdom, but our foundation for this house is definitely built on comics.
For sure. Like I've said before, comic books for me have just, taught me so much about life. And I feel that it's just it's something that I've always felt like I needed a sounding board to talk about, and this podcast, as I've mentioned before, is the perfect format for me to totally just spew out all this useless comic book knowledge that I have.
Yes, we could have been stockbrokers.
We could have lawyers.
With these brains.
Right.
Here we are, but loving it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump right back into it. When we last left off, this is about 1994 is where I was leaving with the death of Superman and everything. You were going into your next phase. This is after high school for you, right? Was this around the same period of time?
The next phase I would talk about is actually post-tornado.
Okay, post-tornado.
Post-tornado. So, it was soul-crushing to see, 17 years of comic book collecting go into the skies. And also at the time, I had a job where I was traveling a lot, and I wasn't really a consistent reader from, basically 1997 to about 2003.
Okay.
So in terms of like timelines, we're starting to kind of line up here a little bit, So you said, Death of Superman was a big deal for you. That's 94 or so. So there's that couple years there. And then I kind of break off away from books until 2003. So do you want to kind of talk about what you have going up until 2003, and then we can kind of line things up?
Yeah, sure. I can fill the gaps a little bit, I guess. But honestly, looking back on everything, you missing out from reading comic books regularly from about like 96, 97 till about like 2003, I can honestly say you didn't really miss shit. Not a lot really happened. For me, as far as comic books go, of course, I was changing during this time. I was getting older. There were girls,
Right. Yeah.
So I was kind of my focus in on the comic books and like the pro wrestling and whatever were kind of doing a little back burner to the social life and figuring myself out as a person and everything. Even as young as I was, still just I wanted to know other things outside of the comics and the wrestling that had just encapsulated my entertainment since I was 9 to about the age of 14.
Okay.
And I but during the mid 90s, it was for me, I was an X-Men kid, as I've mentioned before. I really dug the X-Men, but in the mid 90s, it after Jim Lee left X-Men in like 91, 92, it really fell off for me. there was a lot.
Well, wasn't it like X everything too? Weren't they just
it was oversaturation.
Right.
Once X-Men 1 sold 1 million copies, and then X-Force 2 came out and it sold like 2 million or whatever.
Right.
Like, they were like, oh, we've got something here. The next thing you know, half of the titles being released by Marvel were X titles or had Wolverine in the book in some way, shape, or form.
Right, yeah.
And that was, that saturation kind of ruined a lot of those characters for me in that period of time, especially Wolverine, because he was everywhere. And it was impossible for him to be everywhere and for them to not tell us this issue of whatever happens right after Uncanny, so, just to let you know, you haven't read this issue yet, but this is what he does after that issue, just to give us some semblance of where he is in the Marvel Universe.
Right.
Because in the 90s, Wolverine was everywhere.
Yes, he was.
He was everywhere. And so, the X-Men as a whole, kind of fell off too. Also, you have Claremont, who created all of these characters, all these new characters, especially near the end of his run when Jim Lee came on, and then also too with Weezy Simonson and Rob Liefeld over in New Mutants. They were just developing all these new characters and not really doing anything with them. They just looked cool.
Yes.
And then come after, when all these guys that created them left, and you have them just sitting around, they don't really know what to do with anything but the guys that everyone thought looked the coolest.
Right.
Like Cable.
Right.
Like Gambit.
Yeah.
Deadpool, a little later. Deadpool didn't really catch fire until the late 90s. When
New Mutants 98.
Of course,
right?
I picked that up for a quarter.
Stop it.
Picked it up for a quarter at a convention.
When?
Oh, God, dude. This was about 7 years ago.
You know how much that's worth now?
Well, yeah, I've got a reader's copy. So still, I could sell mine for $50. Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the first appearance of Deadpool, actually, I was looking, I had a friend of mine, Shelly, she was asking me about, so all those comics you have are probably going to be worth a lot of money. Anybody who doesn't read comics or collects comics always says that when you're like, yeah, I got a lot of comic books.
Right.
It's not, they don't see that as, oh, he's got a problem.
Yeah. I'm invested.
Yeah, they look at him like he's some smart dude that's going to have all this money one day, which is totally not true.
It's not, It's not how to invest your money.
Yes, exactly.
Real estate, kids.
Exactly.
That's where you should. That's
Right.
where you make money investing.
Right. So anyway, yeah, we were looking, and I think right now, like a 9.5 graded copy of Deadpool's first appearance goes anywhere from like $1,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But that's when you send it out to like Colorado or whatever, and they grade it.
Yeah, it's like a 9.8 or some insano like
exactly.
that.
And
also, things are worth what people are willing to pay for it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Comic books are no different too.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right about that. So yeah, the X-Men fell into an era of obscurity, in my opinion. Now, of course, there was Age of Apocalypse.
Right.
But Age of Apocalypse had nothing to do with X-Men canon up until that point. This was just a total alternate reality.
Right.
Which for anybody outside of reading X-Men comics at that period of time, they just thought that they totally revamped the entire X-Men
What was
universe.
the premise?
It's as simple as this. Legion, Charles Xavier's son, created a reality where Magneto killed Charles Xavier.
Okay.
Okay, and from that, Magneto felt the guilt of 1,000 lands and decided to do what he should have done all along and, try to bring mutant kind and humankind together. However, you've got Apocalypse, who does not want this to happen, and the mutants have pretty much overrun the Earth, and they're in control. And Apocalypse has citadels in all continents, and
he's the ultimate mutant warlord.
pretty much kind of like how they're doing.
Is he like
Secret
a Doctor
Wars.
Doom, a mutant?
Basically. I mean, they're doing you say Doctor Doom, they're doing the same thing right now with Secret Wars,
Right.
Except, Legion didn't create it. Dr. Doom did. But Dr. Doom, as God Doom in this story, is pretty much Apocalypse in Age of Apocalypse.
Doom will take as much power as available.
Yeah, and Apocalypse will too, but Apocalypse also wields all of the power anyway. Kind of like Doom. Doom does too,
Right.
Yeah.
Doom will mess you up.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there was Age of Apocalypse, and that's a whole other story in general that I could get into, and I just recently picked up the first 3 trades of the entire epic. So there's 4 of them. So,
okay.
And I was going to only pick up the first one, and I did some price checking on Amazon, which is the most evil thing ever invented. I can't stop doing this, and it drives me insane because I price check everything when it comes to like comics and stuff. But the third part of the Age of Apocalypse trades goes for like $80 because it was such a low print.
Yeah.
And I found it at Acme Comics in Orlando for like cover price. And I was like, well, I gotta buy this. So I bought Epic Age of Apocalypse, the complete Epic parts 1 and 3. And I was like, well, I gotta get 2. Yeah. You know, and I read and I was like halfway through the first one then I was like, yeah, I definitely need to get 2. And then I started reading the second one, but God, like I've said, I read so many. I have so many comic books to read, you know. It's
well, you got to be careful because it will turn into a job.
Absolutely.
You'll start feeling obligated to read and you won't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah, and I never really do that. I've gotten like that a couple times in my life, but that was really around the time when I first started making like money, like adult money, to where like, you know, I could spend the money on the comic books, but then I'd spend it on the comic books and be like, oh, this is kind of trash. Yeah. And then we get into the completist, and then we get into the I have no money. So, but anyway, yeah. So for me, you know, in the time that you weren't reading comic books, you know, my favorite stuff, namely the X-Men, wasn't really doing anything. It seemed like all the major things that happened were outside of canon, like Heroes Reborn in Marvel, when they got all the Image guys to come back and revamp all the Avengers and the Fantastic Four and shit. You know? And that was, you know, just a money ploy, basically. They mailed it in. Like Jim Lee, Liefeld, all those guys, they just straight mailed it in on those books.
Well, when does the Ultimate line start?
It doesn't start until 1999.
Okay. All right. So, I missed the first few years of Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah. And Ultimate
Fantastic Four.
Ultimate Spider-Man, the first 13 issues of that book were, as far as not reading it, like reading the same Spider-Man for years and years and then reading that version of Spider-Man, it was the most refreshing thing. Not only that, but that was around the time when I think people were like, man, we could cash in on a movie. We could probably make this into a movie and do something with it. It was around that period of time, around 1999, 2000, when they announced Raimi's Spider-Man.
Right.
And I mean, you read Ultimate Spider-Man, the first volume, and you can definitely see bits and pieces that they took to Hollywood. But the only thing that drove me nuts about that Spider-Man in particular was Peter Parker's hair was just horrible.
Was it?
He had like a bowl cut, and it was like a angled bowl cut to where like his bangs were like down to his chin, but then the rest of it kind of like angled. It's like a haircut you see girls have now.
Was it like super emo or something?
Yeah, they were definitely trying to do that kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it works some places, but not necessarily with geeky Peter Parker. I mean, we saw that in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so yeah, you kind of missed out on the beginning of the Ultimate run, and then another thing you missed out on was Kingdom Come.
Yeah, I came to that late.
Yeah,
when I got back into books,
that was probably a go-to.
Isn't
right
that kind of when Alex Ross really starts making a name for himself?
That was when he made a name for himself.
Yeah, that was
Mark Waid, and Mark Waid too.
Yeah,
you know, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Mark Waid, for writing such a story like that for DC, was fairly young. For doing that, you know, because he had to be in his 20s.
And the whole book is a commentary on comic books in the 90s.
Yep.
So it's kind of,
I mean, from right off the jump, man, all the kids of all the greatest DC heroes are all just a bunch of little assholes.
Right.
You know, can do whatever they want. No one's going to stop them. But yeah, Kingdom Come, a defining book.
Yes.
You know, that's a top 20 must read. If you haven't read Kingdom Come and you tell me you read comic books, I'm going to discredit you a little bit.
Sure.
Because you need to read that book. For anybody that's never read Kingdom Come, check it out. It's probably my favorite. Not my favorite version of Superman. definitely my favorite Elseworlds version of Superman.
Sure,
even
without
better
a
than
doubt.
Red Sun. I prefer this Superman just because they do the whole Superman hasn't been Superman for years because the Joker killed Lois. The Joker,
Yeah.
not Lex, not Brainiac. It was the Joker that killed her
Right.
with a paperweight.
Yeah.
And then Superman, they need him, and Wonder Woman goes to him, and he shows up, and he takes out all these little assholes,
Yeah.
and it's great. And his costume is amazing. The S on the Kingdom Come costume,
That's super cool.
amazing. It's fantastic. Another thing you missed out on the Marvel side was Kevin Smith's Daredevil run, Guardian Devil.
Kevin Smith is so lucky.
Yeah,
He's gotten to do some really cool stuff.
man. I mean, yeah, he is definitely. I envy him. Incredibly, just based on all the fun stuff that he's been a part of,
Right.
that didn't get made.
He just gets invited to the party,
right,
you know? So,
exactly.
I have not read his Daredevil run.
Oh.
So what was it about it? That you...
Daredevil, Guardian Angel or Guardian Devil, I think was a sequel, but not to Born Again,
Okay.
because his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend, what's her name? Is it Karen? Karen Page.
Okay.
She returns, but she's got AIDS because of intravenous drug use.
Okay.
I think she was also either a prostitute or a porn star, one of the two. It was
I think porn star.
yeah.
They're leaning towards that for the TV show.
Yeah, so they bring
Yeah.
her back, and then outside of that, there's this baby that winds up on the doorstep of a nunnery. And for any of you who don't know, Daredevil's mother is a nun in Hell's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And she calls up Matt, and she's like, what do I do? This kid, there's no, trace to a father or anything. It's like an immaculate conception, or so to speak. Well, anyway, meanwhile, you got to bring Bullseye in. Because no awesome Daredevil story, doesn't contain Bullseye. You got to have Bullseye.
Sure.
So he comes in and more or less he kills Karen. That's the big deal for that. He kills her fairly early. So you're like, oh, but he's not the main bad guy behind everything. And one of the covers later on in Guardian Devil gives away everything, but if you got the trade, I don't want to give away the main villain because the main villain is the best part of the whole story. And it's so Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Once you get to
You could tell me when we're off the air.
Okay, sure. But anyway, yeah, so Guardian Angel, that was really big for me. I was really big into the Kevin Smith films at that period of time, mainly because he talked and referenced so much about comic books and everything in those films, and you didn't really see that very often.
No, he has an encyclopedic knowledge.
He does.
He's right up there with like Grant Morrison and things like that. He just knows all the minutia.
Yep. And so yeah, they just came at a perfect time for me, and that brought me into phase one of I've got a job and I can start buying comic books on my own. And then from there, over on DC side of things, Jeff Loeb and Ed McGuinness started their run on Superman.
Okay.
Which is, I was talking about how Kingdom Come Superman is probably one of my favorite, costumes ever. My definitive look for a Superman in a Superman comic book came from Ed McGuinness.
Okay.
Big, cartoony, muscular. All the villains were super steroided out and everything.
Yeah.
It had that manga quality to it.
Sure.
But it was spectacular. Great stories too, because their run happened during 9/11. So you got Superman, who is the all-American superhero who is not American at all.
Yeah.
Doing the whole red, white, and blue thing, during that whole period of time, and being that hero that we didn't have, on that day to stop, 9/11 from happening and stuff like that. So it was just that the midst of that run was really cool. And then they had a big event, and it was basically Earth, War World, which was governed by Imperex, who was a villain created for the event, and then you had Darkseid, Apocalypse. So you had these three worlds all like on top of each other, you know, and there's just all a bunch of crazy shit going on. But yeah, that run of Superman really like brought me back to Superman too, to be like, man, I fucking love Superman, you know, like this is, you know, he's my favorite character in the DC universe because he's this just big hero, you know, and the look added so much to the story. Plus, in my opinion, JEPH Loeb is one of the greatest comic book minds.
Oh God, yeah,
ever.
Yeah, he's a sharp writer.
Yeah, so pretty much, you know, moving back up to when you started picking it back up, in my history of comics, that's all you missed. Now, I'm sure there might be some people listening that were totally into stuff, you know, late 90s. I mean, Wildstorm, I was into the Wildstorm stuff still then too, but mainly I was focused in more so on the like the Kevin Smith Daredevil, the Ed McGuinness and JEPH Loeb Superman, and then just the ridiculous X-Men books that I was for some reason still purchasing.
Right. So I guess that gets us to about 2003 together. Yeah. Right, at this point. So we kind of caught up. So what happens in 2003 for me is I moved to Florida. Okay. And Florida was a big restart button for me. Everything that I had done professionally and personally before, I was rebooting my continuity, you could say. Right. You know, I was starting over. And I had one of those starting over kind of jobs. I was cooking in a diner, and across the street a comic book store opened up, and every Wednesday I would get paid, and I would go over to the comic book store, and I got to know the two guys that ran it very, very well. And this is when I let Men in Tights back in my life. Okay, because by 97 I was barely ever reading a superhero book, but these guys, you know, much like a comic shop here in Orlando, they'd say, hey, have you read this? Have you read that? Have you checked this guy out? Have you checked, you know, that out? And they were throwing all this stuff at me. And
not to get the comics off the shelves, but to know that you're a reader and need to be reading the shit.
Yes, you need to be reading this, reading that. You know, and they wouldn't waste my time. And, you know, the story does not end well. But they were very generous with me. Every birthday, I've got the hardcover of Watchmen over there, hardcover of the Justice League.
Oh, is that Justice?
Alex Ross.
Is that Justice?
That is. I can't read it from here, Matt. If you can go take a quick look while I'm still gabbing. They would give me a big book every year for my birthday.
I'm cracking this open.
You know, he introduced me to the world's greatest superheroes. Yeah. The big Alex Ross, gorgeous book, right?
This is the one where it's the Superman Christmas story, the Batman story, and the Wonder Woman story.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's just all gorgeous Alex Rossness, you know. Yeah. And this is the only way to read Alex Ross.
Is big. That's where I got my Kingdom Come. I got absolute Kingdom Come.
You got to get the $80 Kingdom Come without a doubt.
For sure.
Now, you know, specifically what was I reading? I don't know. But if I look over on the shelf, just about every trade that's on my shelf I bought between now, you know, back to 2003. Here is the one bummer. So I was buying some single issue stuff. I probably had a couple long boxes. Okay. By the time I was getting ready to move up to Orlando, which is 2010. So about 7 years of buying comics from the shop. And here's where the story turns really sour, right? So when you talk about your 2003 stuff, chances are we were reading a lot of the same because I was really into the superhero books. So the comic book store closed, and the one guy, who I'll only refer to as S, in his first name, says, hey, I'm moving a lot of my back stock on eBay. Do you want me to move all your singles, and then maybe you can... Like, I had Volume 1, all the original run of Walking Dead the first year, which don't even look at the price guide. Okay? Don't even look at the price guide, okay? So anyway, I'd known this guy for 7 years. I went to his wedding. I took my long boxes over with my inventory. I said, okay, let's move this on eBay so I can get some trades and get maybe some Silver Age stuff. He disappears. He disappeared with all my books. I bought them from his shop, and then I gave them to him to sell, and then he disappeared.
Hey, we sold your comics, bro.
Yeah, oh yeah. He probably took a very nice trip with The Walking Dead alone. That was a blow for me personally. I grew up in Central Detroit, and I'm not stupid. I trusted someone I shouldn't have, though, and I'm mad at myself more for making that mistake than for him doing what he did. I should have known better. That's collection number 3. Okay? I didn't give him any of the trades, and there's a lot of trades there on the shelf, and others that I've loaned out. I think you got like 5 of them still, right? And also, I go to the library now, and I read a lot. One guy that came out of that period that is very impactful for me is Mark Millar. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, my understanding is Mark Millar was influenced by all those UK guys that I loved reading in the 80s. The difference is he went on to have a career in comics, and I did not. Okay? But his work on The Authority and Wanted, which is very different from the film, the first Kick-Ass, and some other things. Now, Mark Millar can be real hit or miss. Some of his stuff is just...
Well, you're about to find out with that book that I let you borrow.
Yeah, Chrononauts, you said, is a real disappointing ending, which I'm going to have to girdle myself for. But anyway, Millar is one of the strongest creators that came out of that period for me, and Kirkman are the two.
Dude, the not giving anything away, but I will tell you this, and it hit me a couple days ago when I thought about it. The last panel of Chrononauts is one of the characters getting punched right in the nuts.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of Mark Millar
just
sometimes
to let you know
makes these. Wanted sort of ended like that, where Wanted basically told you to fuck off as a reader,
right?
And you're like, I don't understand. I was really enjoying this. Why are you telling me I'm an asshole for reading your comic? Mark Millar has issues. Okay, he has issues. But and we could. I think a great show would be to talk about separating the art from the artist.
Sure.
Yeah. And here's my general rule. If I don't know you're an asshole and I pick up your book and I like it, I will always like it, no matter how much of an asshole you are later on in life.
Just don't call me an asshole in your book.
Yes. If I know you're an asshole, I will probably never pick up your book.
Right.
Okay, so the trick is, creators, if you're an asshole and you want me to buy your book, don't let me know that you're an asshole until later. So anyway, tell me about 03 to 10. I see that on your notes there,
well,
Matt.
I mean, 03 to 010, as far as, really, honestly, DC and Marvel, everything that we've got to this point, a crux of the main canon that most people are familiar with, came out of the events, especially in Marvel comics during 2003 to 2010. It all started out with House of M. Well, I actually started out with Avengers Disassembled.
I need to read... Well, I read Avengers Disassembled. I never read House of M.
House of M is interesting. It's an acquired read. It's also one of those alternate timeline reads, too. And that... The main thing that, of course, came out of that was Scarlet Witch saying no more mutants. And then 98% of the mutant population in the Marvel Universe disappears. I'm an X-Men guy. What the hell are you going to do with X-Men books?
Do they rapture disappear, or do they become normal people?
No. Yeah, some become normal people. Some, because they were held together by some form of energy because they were a mutant, totally die, stuff like that. Like, I'm Liquid Boy. I'm a mutant. He loses his mutant powers, and he just falls on the floor everywhere, and they just, mop him up, or I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so when that happened, that kind of really irked me.
It's pretty sweeping thing to do.
Because I was like, man, Brian Michael Bendis, you hate the X-Men, Like, go to hell. You're like, that's horrible. Why would you do that? It's ironic, though, that I said that then, and then I go and I read his X-Men, and it's like the best X-Men shit that I've read in years, But anyway, so Bendis does that. Well, from that, of course, I've got my Wizard magazine every month. So, I've got my ear to the ground as far as Marvel goes at all times. But also during that period of time, that's when Jim Lee came back to drawing comics. And not only was he drawing comics, but Jeff Loeb, who had just done that brilliant run on Superman, is now going to be writing Batman with Jim Lee as the main artist.
I mean, stop it.
Yeah.
Right?
And then we have Hush. And the history then, is pretty much made, because that's one of those books that are stories that a lot of people either really love or really hate.
Well, what I loved about it is it just brought so much of the continuity, so much of the history
Of Batman.
In a very clear, wonderful narrative.
Yep.
I may be unpopular for saying this, but I'm really not a huge fan of all the Grant Morrison Batman stuff, because it's convoluted.
Right, and he was trying to go to Dimension Z in every episode, in every issue too.
And there's the alien Batman, what's his name? Raja da Batman or whatever, I don't know, Binka da Banco.
It was all based off of like the Mask of Zorro.
Yeah,
like
I can only do so much of the Dream.
Yeah,
that's it. I can only do so much Morrison, and I love Morrison. I love his brain, but sometimes I like a really clear story. Hush did it for me in that way. It just was a celebration of all things Batman. A very dark celebration. Right. But still.
But not only that, man, but Loeb packaged everything so well to where, Jim Lee hadn't drawn a monthly title in years.
What a gorgeous
he gave Jim Lee everyone. I mean, Jim Lee drew everyone.
Yeah.
Especially Bat Universe wise. He covered all the bases and includes a fight with Superman early on, which is awesome too, by the way. Hush was huge, but Hush also kind of opened the doors back for me with DC, because they're outside of like Superman. I wasn't really paying attention to much of the stuff.
Yeah,
I did get into the Chuck Dixon Scott McDaniel Batman.
Okay.
When they changed the Batman shield from yellow to the original just one black bat,
right,
which I always preferred anyway as a kid.
Well, yeah, the yellow shield to me is just very 70s, very Neil Adams.
Look at me, and then when they did the death
of
Bruce,
Target.
Yeah, they did the death of Bruce Wayne, and Grant Morrison brings him back, and like David Finch did the design for the costume, and they bring back the yellow, and they make it like a light beam or whatever, and I'm like, come on. That's like Spider-Man shooting off the spider symbol,
off his nipples.
Right, onto the villains below it. It's stupid.
Why is your webbing coming out of your nipples? Right. I feel so confused.
Yes.
And uncomfortable.
So that opens me up to DC, and then DC then was like, well, let's try to recapture the glory of the Crisis. The Crises or whatever. So, because everyone knows a Crisis on Infinite Earths, but then after that they did Crisis on Multiple Earths, which was not as well known and not as good.
Can I just tell you that I get really confused by how many times the word crisis was used in a mega event.
Yeah.
I'm getting older, and I can't keep up with all this stuff, and Infinite Crisis and this crisis and that crisis, and everything's a crisis, and thank God for stores like, I'll go back to a comic shop where you go in and they have a reading order on the wall.
Right.
If you want to enjoy this, read these titles in this order. Mm-hmm. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
And thank God for the internet, because it gets daunting. It's like, I really want to check this out, but I've got to read 20 trades before I'll understand what's in trade 21.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I want to go back to compressed storytelling.
Right.
Yeah,
I think too, for some reason, the big two, during that period of time in 2003 through 2010 really jumped back on the event bandwagon that the X-Men did for Marvel in the 80s, to where
it's like Black Friday for comics.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to make our money for the year.
Oh, Secret Wars is killing me, dude. It's reading great, but
how much money has it cost you to enjoy?
I'm buying double the amount of comic books every week just because of these freaking Secret Wars tie-ins.
Okay.
And they're all fine, and I've put away, and I've not bought the ones that I started out with and didn't really get into. But still, when it says something, though, for me. It's as good. It's good.
When Secret Wars wraps up,
yeah,
I challenge you to total up the cost of all the issues involved in your reading of Secret Wars. Not total, just the money. I want to know how much, when you're done, how much you spent on Secret Wars.
I mean, I can, off the top of my head right now, I know that the Secret Wars tie-ins, including the Secret Wars actual series, miniseries, I get probably about, I'm going to say 15 tie-ins.
Okay.
They're marked, for the most part, I think, at like, let's just go aim high and say $4.99 price points.
Okay, so round 15, to 5.
15 times 5, that's
$75.
And then each of these miniseries are going $4 a piece.
Yeah.
So, I'm somewhere in the
you
300s.
got a buck. Yeah,
$300.
$3, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's nothing, though. I mean, that's
again,
just
you could be spending your money on worse things.
Hey, Convergence isn't going on right now, thank God.
Yeah, right.
Because that was just totally the worst ever.
I just, I would like to imagine a world where a year goes by where they just publish comics and don't try to do crazy shit.
Well, I think that's actually what Marvel's going to try to do over the next couple years.
Yeah, I really think they're take the pot off the burner, let it settle, and just tell some stories. Because going back to last episode, the early days when I read comics, I would just read an issue, and I was happy. And I didn't need 30 other things to read 30 other things before. The way they wrote comics is you could pick up a book anytime, because again, you would get them at the dime store. Being able to be a completist and pick up every issue every month when you're going to a dime store rack, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So maybe you read issue 60, and then maybe the next time you're there, it's 66.
It always starts out the same way, though.
Yeah.
It always resets, and it tells you in the top, this is your hero, this is where he comes from, these are his powers, he's defending justice.
Right. And 22 pages of good times, right? And there are books that I would love to read that I haven't read because of the amount of groundwork I'll have to do. And there's something to be said for, wouldn't it be great to just have a year where you could pick up any title at any time
and read it and not fully know what's going on?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's impossible. There's no way. I mean, and I think too, a lot of the tie-ins, all these tie-ins, it's not about like enriching the story, man. It's just selling units.
Yeah. Well, they are corporate entities that belong to larger corporate entities, and you serve your stockholders, and that means selling books.
Yeah.
That's why, you go to a company like Image, which is not on that kind of a leash.
Right. Yep.
Is anybody doing better work right now than Image?
Yeah, that's my thing. I don't think so, but at the same time, one thing I really would like more out of Image is for them to have more ongoing titles instead of these...
short bursts,
short 5-6 issue miniseries. Volume 1, you got to wait on Volume 2 maybe like a year or so, if that. I mean, I don't know if there's going to be another Chrononauts. I don't know if there's going to be another Descender. I really hope there is. But you got books like Black Science, books like East of West. Those are ongoing.
Oh, East of West is a pretty cool read, man.
Yeah. Well, I've got every single issue, including the source book, and I've still yet to crack either.
I got 1 through 11 loaned to me by a friend, and I don't have any of the other ones, so I don't know what I'll do. There's another company, too, Dynamite, which did The Boys.
They did a lot of the... they tried to refurbish a lot of old heroes from back in the day.
Dynamite, I don't know anything about the company.
That's
but
Alex Ross.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Is he CEO or Grand Poobah?
He was Grand Poobah. I don't know if he is anymore.
Because they did The Boys, which... was Garth Ennis and Derek Robinson, and this is total revisionist superhero awesomeness. It's Garth Ennis, though, so it gets kind of gross.
Right, yeah.
But basically, it's a world where superheroes are pretty much full of shit and are really dangerous, and most of them are owned by corporations.
Right, they got sponsors and everything like that.
And the boys are a CIA black op that goes in and removes the most dangerous ones, sort of behind the scenes. And one of the other things that's kind of notable about the Boys series is that Simon Pegg is in it.
He's an actual character?
Well,
the character
is based on his personality and his look.
Right.
It isn't Simon Pegg, but it's Simon Pegg.
Right.
Okay, playing a role. So, fuck you, Simon Pegg.
Yeah. This is not...
There's another guy who's led a charmed life and gets to do a lot of cool shit, and he's really nice.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And all that. So, anyway, Dynamite's doing some pretty cool stuff, and now that I know it's Alex Ross, I'll probably look at them a little bit more. Not anymore.
He's not CEO.
Okay.
He's not CEO.
Yeah.
I don't know. What
I don't
he is.
know.
But
What?
I read The Black Terror. I read that.
Oh yeah,
I read that series.
Black Terror.
It just looked cool, so I was like,
Right?
I'll pick him up.
Yeah, so what's going on with me now is that we have what we do outside of the show, which sort of keeps me plugged into what the big two are doing and Image. But when I go to the comic book store or when I go to the library, I just pick up any damn thing I want if it looks interesting. But what I found is that as I get older, I've gone through different phases where with Dennis the Menace, it was the story. I didn't care about the artwork. Who the hell cares about the artwork,
Right.
when you're reading that or Archie or whatever. Oh, and what they're doing at Archie Comics now is some wild stuff, but it's not for everybody. Yeah, whatever. It's,
Whatever.
It's fun, but if you look at my shelf, you'll see there's only one single Archie trade.
The creators blow my mind. These people that are writing Archie. I'm like, Mark Waid is writing Archie.
I know,
I'm like,
right?
What the hell? And of course, you know what?
He's probably having a
Killing
blast,
it, and
too.
he's probably killing it too.
Yeah.
Even though
He's probably having a really good time. So I'm totally up for reading Men in Tights now. I do enjoy the books. There was a good long period where I'll blame mainly Alan Moore, for it, where I struggled reading them with a straight face. But I really gravitate towards the writers, first and foremost. And if it has Warren Ellis's name on it, or Garth Ennis, or, I don't even really like reading Alan Moore that much anymore, but, Jeff Loeb,
Jeff Lemire,
Lemire, Robert Kirkman.
Yeah.
I am a writer-centric guy.
Me too.
But if it's got shitty art, I can't read the book. Which is why, sacrilege, I don't really like Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Because the art is
art
weird.
is terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, well,
I want to love it. I do. I really, really want to love
very
it.
stick figure-y.
Those Sandman books, not for me, man. Because if the art is really bad, I can't do it. What about you, man? Where are you at?
Well, now currently, I mean, I've stated before, I'm a hardcore weekly reader of comic books, and I purchase a lot of the main stuff just to have a leg to stand on, when people are just talking comic books in general. I'm also one that, I like to spread the awareness of, how awesome that they can be. And here recently, over the past few years, especially since I've moved down here to Florida, and the people I've met and everything that are also comic book fans, I've really started to, broaden my horizons as far as, independent books go outside of the superhero genre. I'm reading horror comics. I'm reading crime comics now. And I really dig that. And I'm not going to lie, I also dig a 4-letter word every once in a while in my comic book, just to give it more of like that real vernacular for some of these characters that you don't get in Marvel. And if they do, throw up all the symbols for the 4-letter words, they're just doing it just to do it instead of there being real meaning of telling
you're
somebody.
a mature reader, and you can read things that are mature in their presentation without being gratuitous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes you got to say fuck, man.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't have to turn it into a carnival.
Right.
Either.
Exactly.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Exactly. So I mean, right now, where I am, I mean, like I had said, we had we've gone through, I think, the event era in comic books, through all the crises in DC, and then your House of M, Civil War, Secret Invasion, Siege, all of that stuff that happened for Marvel, leading us up to, Secret Wars event that's going on now. And yeah, I'm really just starting to kind of just see what all is out there. But, it's really hard for me, though, for some of these mainstream comics like your... Oh, geez. What are some of these books that are... My Little Pony. And these, like, books, Adventure Time, that are based on, like, these cartoons.
Sure. And
stuff like that. And this goes back to the Richie Rich books and the Flintstones comics. And even, like, the Ninja Turtle comics based on the cartoons. I had a bunch of friends that got those all the time. And it just wasn't comics for me, you know? Just how I feel.
Matt ain't no brony.
Yeah, man. I'm just not...
I can't imagine a world where I would even. I actually am kind of blown away that there is even a My Little Pony book and that it has fans outside of like 5-year-old girls.
Props to the creators and getting there and establishing a story out of My Little Pony that not just girls but boys and grown men and grown women can enjoy. I dig it. That's fine, but that is not my cup of tea and I don't understand it.
I'm not even going to look into it. I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that it exists, and we'll leave it at that. But going back to one thing before we sort of wind down our topic here is that why not let, Marvel, let the movies handle the big events, and why don't you give us a year or two of just, like, tight little stories using the characters that we love.
Ground the characters a little bit.
That aren't continuity affecting, with wide scope. Let's just get into the characters. Let's just tell some good stories that I don't have to pick up the title every month to follow.
Right.
Where I can just be like, hey, I'm at the store. I don't know why I feel like Captain America this month.
Right.
I just want a good old Cap story.
Right.
Not part 8 of a 12-part arc. Fuck it. Yeah. Let the movies... Let's do the big events in the movies. Let's just have... I know that this is not going to happen. I don't even know. I'm just putting it out in the universe.
Sure.
It would just be nice to be able to pick up a title because I like the character once and be able to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And, that's why I don't do the singles anymore, bro. Yeah. I cannot keep up. I need things to come around as trades where I can read the whole arc and be done with it.
Well, my blog helps me out so much with my weekly reading.
Yeah, Matty Loves Comics.
MattyLovesComics.wordpress.com.
Yeah.
Because what I'll do is I'll run commentary on the prior weeks and then I'll look forward to the week ahead.
Uh-huh.
So when I'm looking forward to the week ahead, generally what I'll do is anything that I know that's going on in those books, I'll say this is what's going on. So when I do get a book that maybe hasn't come out in 5 to 6 weeks,
right?
I go back on my blog and I'll see, that's where I am, and I can pick it up.
Cool.
But
so the blog is for you in a lot of ways.
Definitely. Oh,
it's like a journal.
Sure.
It's like Matty's journal.
Absolutely.
Not the comics journal though.
Yeah.
Matty's comic journal. So,
yeah. Right.
And
it's always born on a Monday.
Yes. Right. So before we close out, and we can't really spend a lot of time with this though. We had fun a while back. Sort of having a classic comic book store, argument, debate, or just sort of conversation. And this was on your blog a while back too. And for those of you listening, feel free to drop this in the comments under the video. Right, we encourage you to drop some comments. So we're doing our five comic book superheroes. Team. We're assembling a team, and what is the team facing, Matt?
Okay, so basically what we have is a scenario to where there is an unknown alien entity on its way to Earth to pretty much fuck everybody up. But one stupid thing the aliens have done is broadcast and say, hey, we're coming to get you. Okay, so we kind of seen what they look like, but we don't know what type of power they are bringing to Earth. So if you just base on seeing them and they're really big and brawny, well, you're probably going to have to think, well, if I'm going to assemble a group of 5 heroes, one of my guys is probably going to have to be pretty big to rough a few of them up. Now, that's just a scenario. that's just if the aliens are that size.
The game here is we pick 5 heroes. They can't be villains.
Right. Can't be villains.
5
have to be
superheroes. They are superheroes from any continuity, any company.
No Care Bears, no My Little Ponies.
Okay, but, superheroes. Right. To face an unknown power level alien threat.
So cover all your bases.
As best you can.
Because if you're formulating a basketball team and you want a starting 5, you've got to have 5 guys. You can't have 5 dudes that all they do is rebound really well. You got to have a shooter. You got to have your defender. You got to have a rebounder. You got to have a good postman. You got to have all these things.
Right.
So it just applies the same way. Sports, comics.
Yeah. A team has very different and compatible skills and abilities.
Right.
Okay, so who were your 5?
Okay, so my 5, and preface this, we already know our 5, and we do have one character, I think just one character that is
We have
similar.
one that is on both our teams. It's not something that we talked about before.
Sure.
We both showed up
Sure.
with our list, and it turns out that we both see value in this one particular character. So
Okay, so first off, in formulating my team, I just, out of the way, I wanted to get rid of the big banger. And my main thing with forming this team was, and this is what I would ask anybody if I'm presenting this question, try not to have your team made up of one Thor or one Superman on your team. Don't have Thor or Superman. Try to go outside of that a little bit. And with my big banger, I did and I didn't. I chose Mark Grayson, Invincible, from Robert Kirkman's Image comic, who is a Viltrumite, and he's half alien, half human. And he's more or less, he can fly at Mach speed. He's super strong, and he's got a healing factor that is not like Wolverine's or Deadpool's, to where it's like an instantaneous thing. Sometimes, if you tear him up pretty good, it takes Mark a little while to heal. Mm-hmm. But he will heal, and kind of like Goku, he is stronger each time he comes back. So I just figure, as far as getting someone out into the sky before they even get to Earth to check everything out, I'm going to probably want to send Human Wrecking Ball, kind of.
Okay.
Just to make sure. Now, back on Earth, monetizing everything would be Hank McCoy, a.k.a. Beast. Why? Because I need a genius on my team. He is, I feel that preparations are always key when you're creating a team to deal with a bad guy in the comic book world. So I feel like he's best for me in all the comics I've read in my life, the best to be able to prep a group of heroes to encounter this entity. I've always wondered why Beast isn't the one that's taken over the mutant schools in the X-Men comics, but that's neither here nor there. Because he's an Inhuman now, but that's a topic for a whole different conversation. But anyway, so I think that Beast, we all know and have seen in comic books, he can handle his own in the field of combat, but also too, I think that he can come up with some interesting tech to deal with an unknown alien entity as far as weapons or ships go.
Yeah.
The rest of my team is kind of based on just either obscure comics, characters that I enjoy that you could pretty much fill in this slot with anybody, but I just wanted to use these guys specifically just because on paper it just looked totally cool. First off is Nico Manuro from the Runaways series. You ever read
I
Runaways?
read the very first Runaways trade.
Do you remember Nico? I don't know if she's in the first Runaways.
I don't remember her.
Okay,
no.
well, she has this thing called the Staff of One. And the Staff of One is basically a spellcaster.
Okay.
You tell the Staff of One to do anything, it'll do it for you. And that's fine. The only catch to it is you can only do it once.
Oh.
Okay, so in ordering to manipulate the staff, you've kind of got to strategize. And that's another reason why I have Beast on the team, to help Nico come up with different things for her to use the staff for to stop these aliens that she hasn't already done before.
Okay.
Like maybe levitation or energy blasts of some sort, stuff like that. All right, so and plus she looks really cool. So I added her to the team. And then also I added Firestorm, which a character with his power set is another one of those types of characters that you can pretty much do almost anything with this guy. You just have to plan accordingly.
He can manipulate things at the molecular level.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so transform, transmute, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, right?
Yeah. So
very powerful.
Yeah. So if you need something to turn into,
Something else,
you look for Firestorm, and he will be there for you. The last guy that I have is also a guy who he's a real smart character too, kind of like Beast, not on that level. The character's name is Madison Jeffries. Madison Jeffries originally debuted, I want to say, during Matt Fraction's run of X-Men.
Okay.
Uncanny X-Men. He has the ability to manipulate, kind of like Firestorm, only he specializes in speaking and manipulating inorganic life, and he can do it on an atomic level. And he can control machines, but he can also phase his body or mind into said machine.
What book is he from?
Uncanny X-Men.
Okay.
And he can control it.
Does he have a handle, or is it
No, it's just Madison
Jeffries.
Yeah. Anyway, he can. Okay, so he's powerful enough. This is the coolest thing about him. If you got an idea in your head, he can touch your head and take that idea. And do it. So if you get an idea for a big tank, he can be like, okay, yeah, I can build this, and he'll build it.
That's cool.
Yeah. He can also like manipulate things to where like he can it's like a form, I guess, of like telekinesis to where he can like move things in midair, and like kind of break it apart, Doc Manhattan style, and form it back together. Okay. Kind of that sort of thing. So so my team more or less breaks down. Invincible, Firestorm, and Nico act as the muscle and the magic. Beast and Madison Jeffries stay on Earth and strategize.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go through mine a little bit more quickly.
Okay.
But now I think everyone's very clear on, what we're going for here. So the one that I had that was on your roster as well is Firestorm.
Sure.
Okay? Because we don't know what we're dealing with, and obviously the ability to transform or transmute material is a huge power to have. Plus, he can fly. He can go out in space. Everything is going to be just fine. The part that you didn't mention, which is nice because it gives me something to talk about, is that he's a shared mind.
The professor, right?
He shares mind with a professor who's a physicist.
Sure.
Right? So I gain...
It's kind of like a 2-in-1.
It's a 2-in-1. You get brain and an amazing power level, right?
But he needs that brain, too, because if we're running with, like, 16-year-old Ronnie Raymond...
Right.
That's the best part about it.
Yeah, the professor allows him to process what it is that he is dealing with, right? Continuing with the brain, I went with Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. In the Marvel Universe, he is the cosmic threat guy.
Yeah.
And as time and time again, I mean, Galactus, for crying out loud. If you got something coming in from outer space, Reed Richards has the most experience, and he's got a huge brain on him. He's very well equipped, and he probably has something in his apartment ready to go.
Oh, of course,
it's probably just in a storage locker, so is that. For pure brawn, I went with the Hulk. The Hulk, you can kind of throw him in anywhere, and as long as you don't worry about collateral damage, he's good to go. So drop him in the middle of the Death Star and let him punch his way out.
Right.
Does not matter. Also, supposedly does not have a ceiling to his power level. He just gets angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier, which could be good for a big battle.
That's also a 2-in-1 too. Because you got Dr. Bruce Banner.
Right? So I actually do end up with 3 scientists.
Nothing wrong with that, though.
No. You got to plan out. Mm-hmm. Then I went with another dual personality, kind of, sort of. Interesting enough, Dr. Fate. Okay, we don't know the source of these aliens, what their abilities are, what dimension they even come from. Dr. Fate covers the magic aspect of it.
Naboo might have some kind of idea of what could be coming.
Right? We got a big brain hiding in that helmet with Naboo. Other resources that he can tap into. Pretty awesome. And then my indie choice is the Mayor from Brian K. Vaughan's Ex Machina. The Mayor's ability is that he can communicate with machinery and electronics. Okay, so imagine Aquaman's ability to talk to the fish. He can talk to electronic and mechanical devices.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah. So, and his technology that allows him to do that is alien technology. So we don't have to worry about him not being able to talk to alien technology.
Right.
Because that's already the basis of his powers. So that's my 5. that's what Matt and I have for you guys. I'd love for you to take a minute and drop them into the YouTube comments.
That would be awesome.
What you guys can come up with.
For sure. Well, that's going to wrap things up here with episode 6 of Matty Loves Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. Follow Tom at ReadTomLucas. You can follow me at _ Matt D. Simone, and also follow the podcast at MattyLovesPodcast. Be sure to visit Tom's website, www.readtomlucas.com, for all of your pertinent Tom Lucas materials, including his book, which is available on Amazon, Pax Titanus.
Yes, please go. Please buy one for your friends. They'll love it.
I have a blog that comes out every Wednesday. It's called Matty Loves Comics. It's on WordPress. Be sure to check it out. One great thing about this podcast and the blog and your website is if you Google it, it's the first thing that comes up.
Woohoo!
Pretty awesome.
It took a while for me to get there. There's a lot of Tom Lucases in the world, but congrats.
So yeah, be sure to check us out. Get in contact with us. Let us know what you're thinking of the show. We're 6 episodes in, and it'd be nice to know if some of you guys are digging it, or what you're maybe not digging about the show.
We will talk about anything.
Anything.
You know what we like to talk about. Throw us some topics, and
sure,
we'll chew it up.
Absolutely. Well, for Dr. Tom Lucas, I'm Matt D. Simone. You guys be good to yourselves, and we'll see you on the next episode of Matty Loves Podcast.
Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.